Hello everyone, I'm Olivia, 32, and I'm still processing the absolute chaos that unfolded at what should have been my sister's wedding last weekend. Rebecca, 35, is my older sister, and she was supposed to marry Christopher, 38, at Willow Creek Estate, the historic venue I purchased and renovated 3 years ago. Everything between them seemed picture perfect on the surface. High school sweethearts reunited after college, engaged within a year, and planning their dream wedding. But then everything imploded in the most dramatic way possible. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Family dynamics are complicated, and mine have always been particularly strained with Rebecca. We grew up in Mapleton, a small town where everyone knew everyone's business. My parents, David and Ellen, owned a modest hardware store downtown, and we lived in a comfortable but certainly not luxurious home on Sycamore Street. As children, Rebecca and I couldn't have been more different. She was the sociable one, homecoming queen, student council president, and captain of the cheerleading squad. I was more introverted, preferring books and art to parties and pep rallies. I wasn't unpopular, just quieter, more focused on academics and my own interests. The real division between us began in high school. While Rebecca was collecting trophies and boyfriends, I was working after-school jobs and saving every penny. I had a plan. I knew exactly what I wanted: financial independence and a beautiful space of my own. My parents always seemed to favor Rebecca's achievements over mine. When she won prom queen, they threw a party. When I received a partial scholarship to business school, they said, "That's nice, but you'll still need loans." Their dismissal of my ambitions hurt, but it also fueled my determination. After college, I took a risk that my family thought was foolish. Instead of pursuing a safe corporate career like Rebecca, I started flipping houses. My first project was a disaster. I underestimated renovation costs and barely broke even. My parents and Rebecca never let me forget that failure. What they didn't see was what I learned from it. My second flip netted a small profit, and by my third I had refined my process. Within 5 years, I had built a successful real estate investment business, while Rebecca worked her way up the corporate ladder at a marketing firm. "Why can't you just get a normal job like your sister?" my mother would ask during family dinners. "Real estate is so unpredictable. Rebecca has benefits, paid vacation, and stability." What they didn't know was that I was out-earning Rebecca 2-1, but I kept my financial success private. I didn't want money to create more tension. Then came Willow Creek Estate. When this historic property hit the market 3 years ago, I instantly fell in love. Built in 1905 by a lumber baron, the 15-acre estate featured a stunning Victorian mansion, manicured gardens, and a charming stone cottage near a natural creek. It had fallen into disrepair, but I could see its potential as both a residence and a venue business. Using the profits from my previous ventures, I purchased the property for $1, $2 million, a steal considering its size and historical value. The renovation was extensive and exhausting. I lived in the small cottage while restoring the main house room by room. I did much of the cosmetic work myself to save money, often working until 2 a.m. after handling my other business affairs during the day. During this time, Rebecca got engaged to Christopher, her college boyfriend whom she had reconnected with at their 10-year reunion. They seemed genuinely happy together, and despite our differences, I was pleased for her. When I finally completed the renovation of Willow Creek Estate, I hosted a small gathering to celebrate. My parents attended reluctantly, but Rebecca declined, citing work obligations. Later, I learned from a mutual friend that she had actually said, "Why would I want to celebrate Olivia showing off again?" That hurt, but I tried to brush it aside. The venue business took off almost immediately. Willow Creek Estate's combination of historical charm, modern amenities, and picturesque setting made it the most sought-after wedding location in our region. Within 6 months, I was booked solid for 2 years in advance, charging premium rates that clients were happy to pay. I kept my private residence in the cottage, which I had renovated to be a cozy retreat away from the events in the main house. About a year ago, Rebecca and Christopher began planning their wedding. During a rare civil dinner with my parents, Rebecca mentioned that her dream venue was booked through the next 3 years and significantly over their budget anyway. Which venue? I asked, genuinely curious. Willow Creek Estate, she replied, not realizing the connection. It's this gorgeous historic property that's been renovated. Everyone says it's magical, but they charge almost $15,000 for a Saturday in June. The table fell silent as my parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Rebecca, my father finally said, that's Olivia's place. Her face flushed as realization dawned. Your house is that Willow Creek Estate, the wedding venue? I nodded, feeling an unexpected mixture of pride and discomfort. Yes, I live in the cottage on the property and run the venue business from there. Rebecca stared at me, her expression unreadable. Then she excused herself and left the table. Later that evening she called me, her voice tight with forced pleasantness. So, about the venue, she began. I knew immediately where this was headed. Rebecca, I'd be happy to host your wedding. As my sister, you wouldn't need to pay the venue fee. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. There was a pause before she responded. Really? You'd do that? Of course, I said, perhaps too quickly. We're family. What I didn't say was that I still had costs to cover: staff, insurance, utilities. But I was willing to absorb those expenses as my gift to her. The standard venue package included the historic mansion, grounds access, tables, chairs, basic linens, parking attendants, and a day of coordinator. Couples typically brought in their own caterers, photographers, florists, and other vendors, though I had a list of recommended professionals. Rebecca seemed genuinely thankful, and for a brief moment I thought this might be the beginning of healing our relationship. We agreed on a date in June of this year, and I blocked it off in my calendar, turning down several full-price inquiries for the same date. Initially, planning went smoothly. Rebecca and Christopher visited the estate to tour the facilities and discuss layout options. Christopher was particularly appreciative, taking time to ask questions about the restoration and complimenting specific details. He was an architect, so he noticed things most people missed. The hand-carved balusters I'd salvaged, the period-appropriate crown molding I'd tracked down from a salvage yard 3 states away. You've done incredible work here, he said while Rebecca was busy taking photos in the garden. This level of thoughtful restoration is rare. You should be proud. Thank you, I replied, genuinely touched by his recognition. It was a labor of love. That evening, Rebecca sent me a text. Can we talk about the wedding planning? When I called her back, her tone had completely changed from our earlier meeting. I think it would be best if you weren't too involved in the planning process, she said bluntly. I want this day to be about Christopher and me, not about your venue. I was taken aback. Of course it's about you two. I'm just trying to help make sure everything goes smoothly since I know the space. Well, it feels like you're taking over, she snapped. Christopher couldn't stop talking about your amazing restoration work on the drive home. This isn't a showcase for your business, Olivia. It's my wedding. I was stunned into silence. Was she actually jealous that her fiancé had complimented my work? After an uncomfortable pause, I simply said, I understand. I'll step back and just handle the venue logistics. Over the next few months, Rebecca became increasingly difficult. She demanded exceptions to venue policies, insisted on changes that violated historical preservation guidelines, and repeatedly scheduled vendor meetings without confirming my availability. Each time I explained a limitation, she accused me of sabotaging her plans. Meanwhile, my parents took her side in every disagreement, suggesting I was being inflexible and should just let Rebecca have her perfect day. Despite these tensions, I continued to accommodate as many requests as possible. I adjusted the standard timeline to allow her extra hours for setup. I permitted her florist to install arrangements that required more wall attachments than I typically allowed. I even relocated some of my personal furniture from the cottage to the mansion, when she decided she wanted a specific sitting area arrangement that required more pieces than the venue inventory included. 2 weeks before the wedding, Rebecca, my mother, and the wedding planner they'd hired came for a final walkthrough. The planner, Melissa, was reviewing the schedule when she mentioned, and then after the ceremony, while the wedding party is taking photos, Olivia will open the east drawing room for the cocktail hour. Rebecca's head snapped up. What do you mean? Olivia will open. Olivia isn't going to be here. Melissa looked confused. But she's the venue owner. We've been coordinating all the logistics with her. For the venue setup, yes, Rebecca said icily. But she's not attending the wedding. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My mother studied her clipboard intently, avoiding eye contact. Rebecca, I said carefully. I assumed as your sister I would be at the wedding. I'm not expecting to be in the wedding party or anything, but I thought I'd be a guest. She looked at me with cold determination. No, you won't be. I've decided I don't want you there. May I ask why? I managed to keep my voice steady despite the hurt and confusion washing over me. Because this is my day, she hissed. For once in our lives, I want something that isn't overshadowed by you. Every time someone comes to the wedding, they'll already be talking about how it's Olivia's amazing venue. I don't want you physically present to make it worse. Rebecca, my mother interjected weakly, maybe you should reconsider. No, Rebecca's voice rose. She always has to one-up me. I get a corporate promotion, she buys a historic estate. I find a nice apartment, she creates a showplace home. I get engaged, suddenly she's running the most sought-after wedding venue in the state. For my wedding day, I want to be the center of attention, not watching guests fawn all over my sister, the successful business owner. I stood there, genuinely shocked by the depth of her resentment. All these years, I'd thought she looked down on my choices, when apparently she'd been envious. Rebecca, I said quietly, I've never tried to overshadow you. We just made different choices. Save it, she snapped. Here's how this will work. Your staff will handle everything on the wedding day. You will make yourself scarce. I don't care if you hide in your cottage or leave town altogether, but you will not be at my wedding. Melissa looked mortified, glancing between us with wide eyes. My mother simply sighed, which told me everything I needed to know about whose side she was on. I took a deep breath. If that's what you want, fine. My venue manager, Alexis, will oversee everything. She's highly capable. I turned to leave, then paused. Just so we're clear, I'm still covering the venue fee as my gift, but you're banning me from attending? That's right, Rebecca confirmed, without hesitation. And I expect the same level of service you'd give to any full-paying client. I nodded, numb, and walked out. For the next week, I threw myself into work, coordinating with Alexis to ensure everything would run perfectly despite my absence. I had a weekend event at another property I managed, so I planned to be there during Rebecca's wedding, keeping busy to avoid dwelling on being excluded from my sister's special day at my own venue. 3 days before the wedding, Christopher called me. This was unusual. He typically left the planning to Rebecca. Olivia, do you have a minute to talk? He asked, his voice serious. Of course, I replied, wondering if there was a last-minute venue concern. I just found out that you're not coming to our wedding, he said. Rebecca told me you couldn't make it because of another business commitment. I nearly dropped my phone. That's not exactly accurate, Christopher. I figured as much, he sighed. What's really going on? I hesitated, not wanting to create more problems. It's complicated. Rebecca and I have different perspectives on this. Please, Olivia, I need to understand. Something feels off about this whole situation. After a long pause, I decided he deserved honesty. Rebecca has explicitly asked me not to attend the wedding. She feels that my presence would take attention away from her because I own the venue. The silence on the other end lasted so long that I checked to see if the call had dropped. Christopher? I'm here, he said, his voice now tight. Let me get this straight. My fiancée banned her own sister from our wedding? The same sister who gave us a venue worth thousands of dollars for free? That's the situation, I confirmed. Look, it's fine. Family dynamics are complicated and… No, he cut me off. It's not fine. This isn't the woman I thought I was marrying. Before I could respond, he thanked me for my honesty and ended the call. That evening, my phone exploded with notifications. First came a series of hysterical texts from Rebecca, accusing me of sabotaging her relationship. Then calls from my parents, demanding to know what I'd said to Christopher. Apparently, he had confronted Rebecca about excluding me, which led to a massive argument during which other issues in their relationship came to light. The next morning, Christopher called again. "I've postponed the wedding," he said without preamble. "I've contacted the guests and explained that we need time to reconsider some fundamental aspects of our relationship. Christopher, I never meant to cause—" "This isn't your fault," he interrupted firmly. Rebecca's behavior revealed something important about her character and values. I'm grateful I discovered this before we married, not after. Later that day, my parents arrived at my cottage unannounced. My father looked grim. My mother had clearly been crying. "How could you do this to your sister?" my mother demanded as soon as I opened the door. "Do what exactly?" I asked, stepping back to let them in despite my reluctance. "Turn Christopher against her!" she cried. "She was finally going to have her perfect day, and you ruined it because you couldn't stand not being the center of attention for once." My father placed a restraining hand on my mother's arm. "Ellen, we agreed to stay calm." He turned to me. "Olivia, we're extremely disappointed. Rebecca told us how you went behind her back to Christopher." "That's not what happened," I said firmly. "Christopher called me asking why I wasn't attending. I didn't volunteer the information, but when he asked directly, I told him the truth. I wasn't going to lie for Rebecca." "You could have made an excuse," my mother sniffed. "Said you had another commitment?" "The way Rebecca did when she told him I couldn't make it?" I shook my head. "No. I'm done covering for her insecurities and for both of your enabling." "Enabling?" My father's eyebrows shot up. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means that for my entire life, you've favored Rebecca and dismissed my achievements. When I work hard and succeed, you act like it's a personal attack on her. Have you ever considered that my success has nothing to do with Rebecca? That I'm just living my life according to my own goals and dreams?" My mother scoffed. "Of course you'd say that. You've always been selfish." Something snapped inside me. Years of suppressed hurt and anger bubbled to the surface. Selfish? I gave her my venue for free, a $15,000 gift. I've spent hours accommodating her increasingly unreasonable demands. I agreed to stay away from my own property during her wedding, even though it hurt deeply. How exactly am I the selfish one here? My parents stared at me, clearly not expecting this outburst. My father recovered first, his voice taking on that condescending tone I'd heard my entire life. "Olivia, you've always had a flair for the dramatic. Rebecca is heartbroken. Christopher is questioning everything about their relationship now, and the wedding they've been planning for a year is in shambles. All because you couldn't simply stay away quietly as she asked." I took a deep breath, determined to remain calm. "Dad, I did agree to stay away. I made arrangements to be working at another property that day. I only told Christopher the truth when he directly asked me why I wasn't attending. Should I have lied to him? Sometimes a small lie prevents larger problems," my mother interjected. "Now Rebecca might lose the love of her life. If their relationship can't withstand honesty, then perhaps they shouldn't get married," I replied. "And if Christopher is reconsidering after learning how Rebecca treated me, that's between them." My father's face hardened. "You always think you know better than everyone else. Ever since you were little, questioning our decisions, insisting on doing things your way. And look where that got me." I gestured around at my property. "I followed my instincts instead of your prescribed path, and I built something successful." "At what cost?" my mother asked sharply. "You have no husband, no children, just properties and money. Meanwhile, you've destroyed your sister's chance at happiness." The unfairness of this statement stung. I didn't destroy anything. Rebecca's own behavior did that, and my life choices are not up for debate. I'm happy with my career and my independence. My parents exchanged that look they'd perfected over the years, the one that said I was being difficult again. My father sighed heavily. "Here's what's going to happen," he said in his problem-solving voice. "You're going to call Christopher. Tell him you misunderstood the situation. Say Rebecca just wanted to surprise you with a special role or something. Fix this." I stared at him in disbelief. I will not lie to salvage a relationship that's clearly built on shaky ground. If Christopher is having doubts, they're valid ones that deserve exploration before marriage, not after. "You owe your sister this much," my mother insisted. I owe her nothing, I replied quietly. I've spent my life trying to earn approval that never came. I gave her my venue for free. I accommodated her demands. I even accepted her ridiculous ban. I'm done overextending myself for people who only see me as competition instead of family. My father's face reddened. If that's your position, then don't expect us to keep playing mediator. You've made your choice. It seems I have, I agreed, opening the door. I think we're done here. After they left, I sat on my porch swing overlooking the creek, feeling strangely peaceful despite the confrontation. For the first time in my adult life, I'd set a clear boundary with my family instead of accommodating their unreasonable expectations. The relief was palpable. The next morning, Rebecca showed up unannounced at my cottage. Her eyes were red and puffy, her normally perfect appearance disheveled. I braced myself for another confrontation but invited her in anyway. Coffee? I offered, keeping my tone neutral. She nodded silently, slumping onto one of my kitchen stools. I busied myself with the coffee maker, giving us both a moment to gather our thoughts. Christopher postponed the wedding, she finally said, her voice raspy. I heard, I replied, placing a mug in front of her. I'm sorry things have gotten so complicated. She looked up sharply. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you seem to have orchestrated this perfectly. My fiancé thinks I'm some kind of monster, our parents are in crisis mode, and you get to play the innocent victim. I leaned against the counter, studying my sister. Rebecca, I never wanted any of this. All I did was answer Christopher's question honestly when he asked why I wasn't attending your wedding. You could have made an excuse, she cried, echoing our mother. Why should I have to lie? You're the one who banned me from my own property for your wedding. You're the one who lied to Christopher about why I wouldn't be there. She flinched slightly but quickly recovered. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. He adores you, you know. Ever since he saw this place, it's been Olivia this and Olivia that. Do you have any idea what that feels like? To hear your fiancé constantly praising your sister? I shook my head in disbelief. He was admiring the venue and the restoration work, Rebecca. It wasn't personal. He loves you. Does he? She asked bitterly. Because he was pretty quick to postpone our wedding over this. Maybe that's because honesty and fairness matter to him, I suggested. Have you considered that? She stared into her coffee. He says he needs to, quote, reevaluate our compatibility. After 4 years together. All because I wanted one day to be about me instead of you. The irony was almost too much. For years I'd felt invisible in my family, constantly overshadowed by Rebecca's conventional achievements, and our parents' obvious preference for her. Yet somehow in her mind she was the overlooked one. Rebecca, I said carefully, I think we need to address the real issue here. This isn't about the wedding or Christopher. This is about the competition you've created between us. I created? She scoffed. You're the one who's always trying to outdo me. How? By pursuing my own dreams that have nothing to do with yours? I've never once made a decision based on what you were doing. I bought this property because I fell in love with it and saw its potential, not to one-up your apartment. I started a venue business because it made financial sense, not to overshadow your engagement. She fell silent, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. Did it ever occur to you, I continued gently, that we might both be successful in different ways? That we could celebrate each other's achievements instead of viewing them as threats? Easy for you to say, she muttered. You've always been the smart one, the different one. I had to be perfect just to get noticed. This revelation stunned me. What are you talking about? Mom and Dad adore you. You're their golden child. You always have been. Rebecca gave a bitter laugh. Is that what you think? They pushed me relentlessly. Why can't you get straight A's like Olivia? Why aren't you more focused like your sister? Every achievement was expected, never celebrated. Meanwhile, you were special because you were independent and, quote, creative. I sat down across from her, trying to process this alternate version of our childhood. That's not how I remember it at all. They dismissed my interests, criticized my choices, and only seemed proud when I did things their way. Well, they criticized me when I didn't do things your way, she countered. Do you know what Dad said when I chose marketing instead of business or finance? Playing it safe again, Rebecca? Your sister would take a bigger risk. We stared at each other, two adults suddenly realizing we'd been pitted against one another by the very people who should have encouraged our individual strengths. We've been competing in a game neither of us chose to play, I said quietly. Rebecca nodded slowly. And destroying our relationship in the process. A heavy silence fell between us. Years of misunderstanding and resentment couldn't be erased in a single conversation. But maybe this was a start. I never meant to overshadow your wedding, I offered. I was genuinely happy to provide the venue as my gift to you. And I shouldn't have banned you, she admitted reluctantly. That was extreme. I just panicked when I saw how Christopher admired you and your work. It triggered all my old insecurities. Christopher admires many people, I pointed out, but he loves you. That's why he proposed to you, not anyone else. She twisted her engagement ring absently. Maybe not anymore. Have you actually talked to him? Really talked? Without accusations or defensiveness? She shook her head. He says he needs space to think. Then give him that, I advised. And use the time to think about what you really want, too. Marriage requires honesty and mutual respect. If you can't have difficult conversations now, it won't get easier after the wedding. Rebecca stayed for another hour. Our conversation wasn't a magical fix for decades of misunderstandings, but it felt like the first authentic exchange we'd had in years. When she left, she hugged me briefly. Awkward, but sincere. Later that afternoon, Christopher called again. I wanted to apologize for putting you in a difficult position, he said. This isn't your problem to solve. No apology necessary, I assured him. Family dynamics are complicated. Rebecca and I are meeting tomorrow to talk, he continued. Whatever happens, I want you to know I don't blame you for any of this. If anything, this situation has revealed issues we needed to address before marriage. I hope you can work things out, I said sincerely. You both deserve happiness, whether that's together or apart. After we hung up, I wandered through my property, thinking about the strange turn of events. The gardens were in full bloom, preparing to host a wedding that might never happen. I'd spent 3 years restoring this estate, creating a place where people celebrated love and commitment. The irony wasn't lost on me that it had become the setting for my own family's breakdown. The next week passed in a blur of work and reflection. I heard through my parents that Rebecca and Christopher were taking a break while reconsidering their relationship. The wedding was officially canceled, not just postponed, and guests had been notified. I expected to feel relief that the drama was over, but instead felt a lingering sadness for the pain everyone was experiencing. 18 days after the canceled wedding date, Christopher requested a meeting at Willow Creek. He'd been there several times during wedding planning, but this visit felt different. We sat in the garden gazebo overlooking the creek. Rebecca and I have decided to end our engagement, he said after some initial small talk. We've realized we want different things and have incompatible approaches to resolving conflict. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Despite the drama, I'd never wished for their relationship to fail. Don't be, he replied with surprising lightness. It's the right decision. The wedding situation was just a symptom of deeper issues we've been avoiding. In a way, your honesty did us both a favor. Still, it can't be easy ending a 4-year relationship. No, he agreed. But staying in it would have been harder in the long run. He gazed out at the water. This place is really special, you know. Peaceful. That's why I fell in love with it. I smiled. Even before the renovation, you could feel its potential. We talked for over an hour about architecture, restoration challenges, and his recent work projects. The conversation flowed easily, without the tension that had surrounded his previous visits as Rebecca's fiancé. As he was leaving, he hesitated at his car. Would it be completely inappropriate if I asked to see you again? Not here, not about the property, just dinner, perhaps. The question caught me off guard. Christopher, you were engaged to my sister until very recently. That would be complicated. He nodded quickly. Of course. Bad timing. Forget I mentioned it. It's not that I'm not flattered, I clarified. But there's too much history there. Too many potential misunderstandings. You're right, he acknowledged. I respect that. Still, I value our conversations and your perspective. Maybe we could be friends at least? I agreed to that much, and we parted amicably. I didn't mention his dinner invitation to anyone, especially not Rebecca. Some boundaries were better left uncrossed, regardless of how comfortable I felt in his company. 3 months passed. The canceled wedding faded from local gossip, replaced by newer dramas. My venue business continued to thrive, with Willow Creek booked solid through the following year. I expanded my property portfolio, purchasing a small commercial building downtown that I plan to renovate into boutique retail spaces. My relationship with my family remained strained but civil. Rebecca and I texted occasionally, surface-level exchanges about work or general life updates. My parents maintained a polite distance, calling on birthdays and holidays but avoiding deeper conversations. I was surprisingly okay with this new normal. The space allowed me to focus on my goals without the constant undercurrent of disapproval. Then came the unexpected olive branch. Rebecca asked if we could meet for coffee at a neutral location, not my property or her apartment. We chose a small cafe downtown, one we'd both frequented as teenagers. She looked better than she had during our last encounter. Rested, put together, more like her usual self. After ordering, she didn't waste time on small talk. I've been in therapy, she announced, since the wedding situation. That's good, I replied, genuinely pleased. How's it going? Eye-opening. She stirred her latte absently. Turns out I have some issues with comparison and validation. Who knew? Her self-deprecating smile was new. Rebecca had never been one to poke fun at herself. We all have our things to work on, I offered. My therapist suggested I apologize to you properly, she continued. Not one of those non-apologies like, I'm sorry you felt that way, but a real one. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Olivia, for banning you from the wedding, for lying to Christopher about it, and for years of treating your successes as personal attacks. None of that was fair or healthy. I hadn't expected such directness and found myself momentarily speechless. Thank you, I finally managed. That means a lot. I'm not saying we'll suddenly be best friends, she clarified. We're different people with different values, but we're still sisters, and I'd like to have some kind of relationship that isn't toxic. I'd like that too, I agreed. And, for what it's worth, I'm sorry if my success ever made you feel diminished. That was never my intention. She nodded. I know that now. I've been doing a lot of thinking about our childhood and how we were pitted against each other. Mom and Dad may have meant well, but they created a competition neither of us could win. Have you talked to them about this? I asked. Trying to, she grimaced. They're resistant to the idea that their parenting wasn't perfect. Dad especially hates being challenged. Tell me about it, I laughed, and surprisingly, she joined in. We spent 2 hours at that cafe, talking more openly than we had in years. Rebecca shared insights from her therapy, and I opened up about my own struggles with belonging and validation. We didn't solve everything, but we laid groundwork for a healthier relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than competition. As we were preparing to leave, she hesitated. There's something else I should tell you. I've been seeing Christopher for coffee occasionally, just as friends, she quickly added. We're both processing the relationship ending, and it helps to have closure conversations. You don't need my permission, I assured her. Your relationship with Christopher is your business. I know, but after everything, she shrugged. Anyway, he speaks highly of you. He mentioned you two have talked a few times as well. I nodded, wondering if he'd told her about his dinner invitation. Just about business, mostly. He's consulting on my downtown renovation. Rebecca smiled wryly. Always the professional. That's what I admire about you, your focus. I've never had that kind of clarity. We all have different strengths, I reminded her. Your ability to connect with people and build relationships is something I've always envied. Her eyebrows shot up. You envied something about me? Of course, I admitted. You make friends effortlessly. People are drawn to you. I've always had to work harder at that. She looked genuinely surprised. I had no idea. Maybe that's our problem, I suggested. We've been so busy assuming the worst about each other that we never noticed what we might actually admire. As we parted ways outside the cafe, Rebecca hugged me. Not the awkward, obligatory hug from months ago, but a genuine embrace. This was good, she said. Let's not wait so long next time. I'd like that, I agreed, surprised to find I meant it. Driving back to Willow Creek, I reflected on our conversation. Years of competition and resentment wouldn't disappear overnight, but this felt like a significant first step. Perhaps we could build something new. Not the close sisterhood of childhood dreams, but a more mature relationship based on understanding our differences rather than being threatened by them. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I hosted a small dinner party at Willow Creek to celebrate the completion of my downtown renovation project. The boutique retail spaces had all been leased before construction even finished, a testament to the growing demand for upscale shopping options in our once sleepy town. I'd invited local business owners, investors who'd shown interest in my future projects, and a few close friends who'd supported me through the family drama earlier that year. To my surprise, Rebecca had asked if she could attend. I'd like to see what you've been working on, she'd said during our now regular monthly coffee meetings. If that's okay with you. I'd hesitated only briefly before agreeing. Our relationship had improved significantly over the past few months. We weren't best friends, but we'd developed a respectful rapport built on our newfound understanding of our shared history. The evening was going smoothly. Cocktails on the terrace, followed by a seated dinner in the renovated conservatory. I'd hired a local chef to prepare a seasonal menu showcasing ingredients from area farms. Rebecca arrived fashionably late, turning heads in a midnight blue dress I'd never seen before. Sorry I'm late, she whispered, kissing my cheek. Last-minute client emergency. No problem, I assured her. We're just starting drinks. Let me introduce you around. As I guided her through the gathering, I was struck by how naturally she engaged with everyone. This had always been her superpower. Making instant connections, remembering names and details, drawing people out with genuine interest. In business settings, I'd learned to be personable, but it required conscious effort. For Rebecca, it was effortless. Your sister is delightful, commented Elaine, one of my investors, after Rebecca moved on to chat with another group. You two seem very different, but I see the family resemblance in your smiles. We are different, I agreed, but we're learning to appreciate those differences instead of competing over them. Dinner was served, and I'd carefully arranged the seating to ensure interesting conversation dynamics. Rebecca ended up between my architect and the owner of a successful local restaurant chain. From across the table, I could see her animated expressions as she discussed something that had both men laughing appreciatively. During dessert, I stood to make a brief toast, thanking everyone for their support and celebrating the successful launch of Mapleton Commons, my downtown project. When I purchased that dilapidated building last year, I said, champagne flute raised, many people questioned my judgment. The structure had been empty for a decade, the roof was collapsing, and downtown revitalization efforts had stalled. But I saw potential where others saw problems. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. That's been the story of my career, finding hidden value and bringing it back to life. Willow Creek Estate was considered a money pit when I bought it. Now it's the premier event venue in 3 counties. I smiled at the affirming nods. But tonight isn't just about celebrating a successful project. It's about acknowledging that we all see the world differently, and those different perspectives create opportunity. My eyes met Rebecca's across the table. She gave me a small, encouraging nod. I've learned recently that what looks like competition can actually be complementary strengths. My sister Rebecca, I gestured toward her, has taught me that while I'm good at seeing potential in properties, she excels at seeing potential in people. Both skills are valuable, just in different contexts. Rebecca's eyes widened slightly, clearly not expecting this public acknowledgement. So as we celebrate this milestone, I'd like to announce a new venture. Willow Creek Enterprises is expanding to include a consulting division that will pair my expertise in property development with people-focused business strategies. And I'm pleased to share that Rebecca will be joining the team as head of client relations. A ripple of surprised applause broke out. Rebecca's mouth had dropped open, in genuine shock. We hadn't discussed this possibility yet. I'd only conceived the idea last week, and had planned to approach her privately after seeing how tonight went. To new beginnings, unexpected partnerships, and the strength that comes from embracing our differences, I concluded, raising my glass higher. To new beginnings, the table echoed, glasses clinking. As the guests mingled over coffee and digestives, Rebecca pulled me aside into the adjacent sitting room. "Was that for real?" she asked, her expression a mix of confusion and excitement. "Or just for show?" "Completely real," I confirmed, though I'd planned to discuss it with you privately first. The moment just seemed right. "You want to work with me? After everything?" "Because of everything," I corrected her. "Our coffee talks have shown me that you have insights I lack. You understand people and relationships in ways I never will. That's valuable in business, especially as my projects grow larger and more complex." She studied me skeptically. "Is this a pity offer? Because I don't need charity, Olivia. My marketing career is going well." "It's not charity," I assured her. "It's strategy. I'm good with properties and numbers. You're good with people and perceptions. Together, we could build something significant. You'd have equity in the new division, not just a salary." Rebecca leaned against the doorframe, considering. "What would Mom and Dad say?" I laughed. "Probably that we've both lost our minds. But this isn't about them. It's about what makes sense for us." "I'll need to see a proper business plan," she said, slipping into her professional tone. "Projections, role definitions, equity structure." "Of course," I nodded seriously, then broke into a smile. "See? You're already bringing value. I would have just handed you a contract and expected enthusiasm." She laughed. "We really do see things differently, don't we?" "That's the point," I replied. "Different perspectives, complementary strengths." Our conversation was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Sorry to intrude, but I wanted to congratulate you both." We turned to find Christopher standing in the doorway, looking sharp in a charcoal suit I hadn't seen before. I'd invited him as a courtesy since he'd consulted on the downtown project, but hadn't been certain he'd attend. "Christopher," Rebecca greeted him with surprising warmth. "I didn't know you'd be here." "Professional support," he explained. "Olivia's renovation is a significant achievement for the town." An awkward silence threatened to descend, but Rebecca recovered smoothly. "It certainly is, and apparently I might be joining her business ventures soon." "Really?" His eyebrows rose as he looked between us. "That's unexpected." "Life is full of surprises," I shrugged. "Sometimes the worst disasters lead to the best opportunities." The three of us chatted for a few minutes about the downtown project and Christopher's recent commission to design a new community center. The conversation flowed more easily than I would have imagined possible 6 months ago. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, I found myself standing on the terrace alone, enjoying the crisp autumn air. The sound of approaching footsteps made me turn. "Quite a night," Christopher said, coming to stand beside me at the stone balustrade. "You've accomplished something remarkable with both properties." "Thank you," I replied. "I'm proud of how they turned out." "And now a new business venture with Rebecca?" His tone was curious. "That's a significant development." I smiled. "We're still figuring it out, but yes. It feels right somehow." "I'm glad," he said sincerely. "For both of you." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out over the illuminated gardens. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Christopher finally said. "Would that dinner invitation still be inappropriate? It's been 6 months since Rebecca and I ended things, and from what I can tell, she's moved on completely." The question caught me off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Christopher and I had continued working together professionally on the downtown project, and I'd enjoyed his company and perspective. "That would depend," I said carefully, "on what the dinner would mean. It would mean I'd like to get to know you better, outside of professional contexts, he replied simply. No pressure, no expectations. Just dinner. I considered his words. I'd need to talk to Rebecca first. Regardless of how their relationship ended, there's a code among sisters. He nodded. I understand and respect that. The offer stands whenever you're ready, if you're ready. The next morning, Rebecca called me early. So about this business proposal, she began without preamble. I've been thinking about it all night. And? I prompted, pouring my coffee. I'm intrigued, she admitted, but I have conditions. I'm listening. First, I want a clear path to partnership, not just division leadership. Second, I want autonomy over my department. Third, I want my own office at both properties. And fourth, she paused dramatically, I want us to establish rules about keeping our professional and personal relationships separate. All reasonable, I agreed. I'll have my lawyer draft something this week. Good, she sounded satisfied. Now, about Christopher. I nearly spilled my coffee. What about him? He's going to ask you out, she stated matter-of-factly. If he hasn't already. How did you? Please, she scoffed. I dated the man for 4 years. I know his signals, and he's been signaling interest in you since last Christmas. I set my mug down carefully. Rebecca, I would never… Oh, stop, she interrupted. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm giving you permission. Permission? I echoed, confused. Yes, she sighed impatiently. To date my ex-fiancé if you want to. We've been having closure conversations for months. And in our last one, he asked if I'd be okay with him pursuing you. I said I'd think about it. I have, and I'm okay with it. I was momentarily speechless. That's unexpectedly mature. She laughed. Therapy works wonders. Look, Christopher and I weren't right for each other. We both know that now. But he might be right for you. You're both analytical, detail-oriented perfectionists who get excited about historical preservation and structural integrity. When you put it that way, we sound thrilling, I said dryly. My point is, I'm not going to stand in the way of something that might make you both happy. Just promise me one thing. What's that? If it gets serious, don't get married at Willow Creek. That would be weird even for our newly evolved relationship. I laughed, relieved at her unexpected blessing. Deal. 3 weeks later, Christopher and I had our first official date, dinner at a small bistro in the next town over, where we were less likely to fuel local gossip. The conversation flowed effortlessly from work to hobbies to childhood memories. He was easy to talk to, thoughtful in his responses, and genuinely interested in my perspectives. By dessert, I found myself thinking this might be worth pursuing further. I have a confession, he said as we lingered over coffee. I've been interested in you since that first Christmas dinner at your parents' house. What? I was genuinely surprised. But you were with Rebecca then? He nodded. I was, and I was committed to her. But I remember thinking how refreshing your directness was compared to your family's performative quality. You were the only one who seemed authentic. That dinner was a disaster, I recalled. It's when Rebecca first accused me of trying to steal you away. I know, he said grimly. She told me later, and I thought it was absurd. But it planted a seed of doubt about our relationship. I started noticing how competitive she was with you, how threatened she felt by your successes. We're working on that, I said, feeling a strange urge to defend my sister despite our complicated history. I know, and I'm glad, he replied sincerely. The business venture is a positive step. I just want you to know that my interest now isn't sudden or opportunistic. It's been there, acknowledged but not acted upon, for quite some time. Our relationship progressed cautiously over the following months. We were both conscious of the potential complications and moved deliberately, spending time together primarily in private settings to avoid town gossip. Rebecca kept her word about supporting our connection, even joining us occasionally for casual dinners or local events where the three of us would inevitably run into acquaintances. Rebecca is handling this whole situation with remarkable grace, my friend Alexis commented, after witnessing us all chatting comfortably at a community fundraiser. I'm not sure I could be that evolved about my sister dating my ex-fiancé. It helps that she broke up with him, I pointed out. And that she's realized they weren't well matched. Plus, she's seeing someone new herself. That attorney she met through work. Still, Alexis persisted, it's unusual. Your whole family situation has transformed dramatically in a year. She wasn't wrong. The canceled wedding that had seemed like a family-destroying disaster had ultimately catalyzed significant positive changes. Rebecca and I had found a way to be sisters without being competitors. I was dating someone who appreciated my strengths rather than feeling threatened by them. Even my parents had begun to adjust their perspectives, though more slowly and with frequent backsliding. Speaking of my parents, they had reacted to the news of my relationship with Christopher exactly as expected, with shock, disapproval, and dire predictions. This will never work, my mother had declared during an uncomfortable Sunday dinner where we'd finally shared the news. You're building a relationship on the ruins of your sister's happiness. Mom, Rebecca had interjected surprisingly firmly. My happiness wasn't ruined by Olivia. Christopher and I weren't right for each other. We both know that now. My father had shaken his head in disbelief. I don't understand any of this. First, you girls are at each other's throats over the wedding. Then you're business partners. And now you're passing boyfriends back and forth like trading cards. That's a gross mischaracterization, I'd replied evenly. Christopher and I waited an appropriate amount of time, and we have Rebecca's blessing. It's still strange, my mother had insisted. People will talk. Let them, Rebecca had shrugged. We know the truth. That dinner had ended with tentative peace, if not enthusiastic support. My parents were adjusting to this new reality, where their daughters made decisions independently of their approval and supported each other instead of competing. Almost exactly 1 year after the canceled wedding, Willow Creek hosted a different kind of celebration, the official launch of Willow Creek Consulting, with Rebecca at the helm of client relations. We transformed the estate's former carriage house into modern offices while preserving its historical character. The renovation had been Christopher's project, showcasing his talent for blending contemporary functionality with historical integrity. The launch party was elegant but understated. Champagne and hors d'oeuvre for local business leaders, potential clients, and supportive friends. Rebecca worked the room masterfully, connecting people with common interests, highlighting the firm's unique approach, and generating genuine excitement about our services. I watched her from across the room, marveling at how our relationship had evolved. A year ago, she'd banned me from her wedding at my own venue out of insecurity and jealousy. Now she was confidently leading a division of my company, dating a successful attorney who seemed to adore her, and happily chatting with my boyfriend, her ex-fiancé, without a hint of awkwardness. Your sister is a natural, Christopher murmured, appearing at my side with fresh champagne. She's signed 3 potential clients already, just through conversation. That's her superpower, I agreed, accepting the glass. She connects with people instantly. I've always envied that ability. You have different strengths, he reminded me. Together, you're formidable. My parents arrived fashionably late, making their way through the crowd with measured smiles. They'd been skeptical about our business partnership almost as much as our personal relationship developments, but had agreed to attend out of familial obligation, if nothing else. Congratulations, my father said stiffly, kissing my cheek. The place looks impressive. Thank you, I replied. Christopher did an amazing job with the renovation. My mother glanced around critically. It's certainly modern. With respectful nods to the original architecture, Christopher added smoothly. We preserved all the historical elements while updating the functionality. Rebecca seems to be enjoying herself, my father observed, watching her laugh with a group of potential clients. She's excellent at this, I said. We've already got more inquiries than we can handle for the first quarter. My mother's eyebrows rose slightly. Really? That's surprising. Is it? I challenged gently. Rebecca has always been skilled with people, and I have a strong track record with properties. Combined, we offer something unique in this market. I suppose, she conceded reluctantly. It's just not what we expected. Life rarely gives us what we expect, Mom, I replied. Sometimes it gives us something better if we're open to the possibilities. Later that evening, after the last guests had departed, Rebecca, Christopher, and I shared a quiet moment on the terrace, reflecting on the successful launch. I think we might actually pull this off, Rebecca said, kicking off her heels and propping her feet on a garden chair. The business, I mean. We had serious interest from at least 7 potential clients tonight. More than that, I confirmed. Elaine Henderson wants us to evaluate her entire real estate portfolio for redevelopment opportunities. That alone could keep us busy for months. And the Millers want help reconceptualizing their downtown restaurant space, Christopher added. They approached me after talking with Rebecca. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, enjoying the clear night sky and the subtle garden lighting I'd had installed along the terrace. A year ago, I would never have imagined us here like this, Rebecca mused. My canceled wedding turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to all of us. Perspective is everything, I agreed. What looks like disaster can become opportunity if you're willing to see it differently. 2 years after what we now jokingly referred to as the wedding that saved us all, Willow Creek Enterprises had expanded beyond our most optimistic projections. What began as a venue business and small consulting firm had grown into a regional powerhouse in property development and revitalization. Rebecca's division had tripled in size, adding specialists in community engagement, brand development, and stakeholder relations. My portfolio had expanded to include historic properties across 3 states, each carefully restored and repurposed for modern use while honoring their architectural heritage. Christopher and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm, dividing our time between my cottage at Willow Creek and his downtown loft. We weren't rushing into marriage. We'd both witnessed firsthand how external pressures could distort relationships. But we were building something solid and meaningful at our own pace. One crisp October morning, I sat at my desk reviewing quarterly projections when Rebecca burst into my office without knocking. Waving her phone excitedly, "You're not going to believe this," she announced, dropping into the chair across from me. Landmark Preservation Society just announced their annual awards, and Willow Creek is a finalist for excellence in adaptive reuse. I stared at her in disbelief. The Landmark Preservation Society Awards were the most prestigious recognition in historical restoration, essentially the Oscars of our industry. Even being nominated was a significant honor. "Are you serious?" I grabbed her phone to confirm, scanning the announcement. Sure enough, Willow Creek Estate was listed among 5 finalists in our category. "This is incredible! The ceremony is in New York next month." "We have to go," Rebecca insisted. "This is huge exposure for the business, not to mention validation of everything you've built." "Of course we'll go," I agreed, already mentally planning. "We should bring the whole executive team. It's a perfect networking opportunity, regardless of whether we win." Rebecca hesitated, an odd expression crossing her face. "Actually, I think there's something else you should know. Look at the other finalists." I glanced back at the phone, reading more carefully this time. My stomach dropped when I saw the 4th name on the list, Harrington Heritage Holdings, my parents' company. When did they? I trailed off, confused. "Last year," Rebecca explained. "After seeing our success, they decided to pivot from new construction to restoration. They purchased that old textile mill in Riverdale and converted it into mixed-use space. Apparently, it's quite impressive." I sat back, processing this information. My parents had spent decades in conventional real estate development, focusing on new suburban housing and strip malls. Historical preservation had been my passion, one they'd repeatedly dismissed as impractical and financially unsound. Now they were finalists for the same award as Willow Creek? "I don't understand," I admitted. "They've always thought historical restoration was a fool's errand. Dad used to call it pouring money into money pits." Rebecca shrugged. "People change. Or maybe they just recognize a profitable trend when they see one." "Have you seen their project?" I asked. Not in person, but I've looked at the website. It's good. Different from your approach, more contemporary, but they've preserved the essential character of the building. I nodded slowly, unsure how to feel. Part of me was irritated that they'd moved into my professional niche after years of criticizing my choices. Another part recognized that imitation was the sincerest form of flattery. Either way, we'd be attending the same award ceremony as competitors. This will be interesting, I said finally. Have you told them about our nomination? Not yet, Rebecca replied. I thought you should know first. The weeks leading up to the ceremony were hectic with preparations. I insisted on approaching the event strategically, viewing it as a business opportunity regardless of the family complications. We prepared media kits showcasing our portfolio, arranged meetings with potential partners while in New York, and carefully selected our team members who would attend. My parents, predictably, had a different reaction when we finally discussed the nominations over dinner. What a coincidence, my mother remarked with forced casualness. Both our companies recognized in the same year. Quite a coincidence, I agreed neutrally. Especially since you only entered the historical preservation field recently. My father cleared his throat. We've always had an interest in architectural history. This was just our first opportunity to put it into practice on a significant scale. Rebecca caught my eye across the table, her expression clearly communicating. Really? Without words. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing your project, I offered diplomatically. The textile mill conversion sounds impressive, from what I've heard. It's been featured in Architectural Digest, my mother mentioned, not quite hiding her pride. Perhaps you saw it? I must have missed that issue, I replied, maintaining my composure. Congratulations on the coverage. We could arrange a tour if you're interested, my father suggested. Since we're all in the same field now, it might be beneficial to exchange ideas. I raised an eyebrow at Rebecca, who looked equally surprised by this overture. That would be educational, I agreed cautiously. The dinner continued with careful conversation, all of us navigating this new dynamic where we were both family and professional competitors. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it was significantly less hostile than our interactions had been 2 years earlier. As we were leaving, my mother pulled me aside in the foyer. Olivia, I know this situation is unusual, but I hope we can be supportive of each other at the ceremony, regardless of who wins. I studied her face, searching for insincerity but finding none. I'd like that, I replied honestly. Recognition for both our companies brings attention to the importance of preservation work. That's a win either way. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. You've built something remarkable at Willow Creek. Whatever happens with the award, you should be proud. The compliment, perhaps the first genuine one she'd offered about my business, caught me off guard. Thank you. That means a lot. 2 days before we were scheduled to leave for New York, Rebecca and I visited the Riverdale textile mill to see our parents' project firsthand. The 5-story brick building had been a community eyesore for decades after the mill closed in the 1970s. Now it housed retail spaces on the ground floor, offices on the second and third, and luxury apartments on the upper levels. I have to admit, they've done a remarkable job, I conceded, as we toured the building with the project manager. The exposed brick and beams, the repurposed machinery as design elements, the historical displays in the lobby. It's thoughtfully executed. Different from your approach, Rebecca observed, but effective, more modern industrial, while Willow Creek is classic historical. Both have their place, I agreed. Different buildings call for different treatments. The project manager, unaware of our family connection, continued enthusiastically. The Harringtons were adamant about preserving the building's industrial character while making it functional for contemporary use. Mr. Harrington personally sourced many of the historical artifacts displayed throughout the property. This detail surprised me. My father had never shown interest in historical items before. As we continued the tour, I noticed other touches that demonstrated genuine care for the building's heritage. Preserved graffiti from millworkers dating back decades, original signage restored and prominently displayed, even the original time clock mounted in the lobby with educational materials about working conditions during the mill's operation. Who handled the historical research? I asked casually. Mr. Harrington did most of it himself, the manager replied. He spent months at the local historical society and interviewing former mill workers. Said he wanted to get the story right. I exchanged a glance with Rebecca, both of us processing this unexpected information about our father's involvement. This wasn't a superficial project or a cynical attempt to capitalize on a trend. He had invested himself personally in understanding and honoring the building's history. After the tour, Rebecca and I sat in a coffee shop across from the mill, collecting our thoughts. "So," she began, stirring her latte absently, "it seems Dad has developed a genuine passion for historical preservation." "Apparently," I agreed, still processing. "I never would have predicted that." "Maybe seeing your success with Willow Creek opened his eyes to possibilities he hadn't considered before," she suggested. "Maybe," I allowed, though it's hard not to see it as encroachment on my professional territory. Rebecca considered this. "Or maybe it's the first real common ground you've had in years. A shared interest rather than a point of contention." I hadn't thought of it that way. Throughout my life, my father and I had approached nearly everything from opposite perspectives. This was the first time we'd moved in the same direction, even if we were technically competitors. "That's an interesting perspective," I acknowledged. "I'm not sure how to feel about it yet." "You don't have to decide right now," she pointed out reasonably. "Let's just get through the awards ceremony and see what happens." The Landmark Preservation Society Awards were held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, with the ceremony in the Temple of Dendor and the reception following in the Great Hall. Our team arrived early, everyone dressed impeccably, and prepared to represent Willow Creek with professional polish regardless of the outcome. I spotted my parents across the room during the pre-ceremony cocktail hour. My father looked uncharacteristically nervous in his tuxedo, my mother elegant but tense in a conservative navy gown. After a moment's hesitation, I made my way toward them, champagne flute in hand. "Congratulations again on being finalists," I offered sincerely. "After seeing the mill, I understand why the committee recognized your work." My father's expression softened slightly. "Thank you, Olivia. That means a great deal coming from you." "The textile mill has a different aesthetic than Willow Creek, but it respects the building's heritage," I continued. "I was particularly impressed by the historical displays." "That was your father's pet project," my mother said, her voice carrying a hint of affectionate exasperation. "He became obsessed with the mill's history, spending more time in archives than on construction oversight." My father actually looked embarrassed. I found it fascinating. 3 generations of families worked in that building. Their stories deserve to be preserved along with the architecture. "I couldn't agree more," I said, genuinely impressed by this perspective. "That's always been my philosophy with Willow Creek, respecting the human history as much as the structural elements." Something shifted in that moment. A small but significant realignment in how we saw each other. For perhaps the first time, my father and I were speaking the same language, sharing an understanding that transcended our complicated history. When it came time for our category, the atmosphere in the grand space grew tense with anticipation. The presenter described each finalist project, with accompanying slides. Willow Creek Estate drew appreciative murmurs from the audience when images of the restoration appeared on screen. The textile mill similarly impressed, with particular mention of its community impact and historical documentation efforts. And the award for excellence in adaptive reuse goes to... The presenter paused dramatically, opening the envelope. "Willow Creek Estate by Willow Creek Enterprises." A surge of emotions washed over me. Pride, validation, excitement. Rebecca squeezed my arm as our team erupted in restrained professional applause. As I made my way to the stage, I caught sight of my parents. Their expressions weren't what I expected. Instead of disappointment, they appeared genuinely proud. During my acceptance speech, I emphasized our company philosophy of honoring each building's unique character and history while giving it new purpose for contemporary needs. I thanked my team, acknowledging each department's contribution. Then, in an unplanned moment of generosity, I added, "I'd also like to acknowledge another finalist whose work I greatly admire, Harrington Heritage Holdings. Their textile mill project demonstrates that historical preservation can revitalize communities while honoring the generations who built them." Their commitment to documenting and sharing the human stories behind the architecture sets a standard for the industry. From the audience, my father's surprised expression shifted to one of genuine appreciation. I realized in that moment that recognition from a peer, especially one whose opinion he valued, despite our differences, meant something significant to him. At the reception afterward, industry leaders and potential clients surrounded our team, offering congratulations and expressing interest in future collaborations. In a quiet moment between conversations, my father approached, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "Congratulations," he said, offering me one of the glasses. "Your win was well-deserved. Willow Creek is exceptional." "Thank you," I replied, accepting the champagne. "I meant what I said about the textile mill. It's impressive work." He nodded, looking uncharacteristically reflective. "You know, watching you succeed with Willow Creek made me reconsider some long-held assumptions. I'd always believed that new construction was more profitable, more practical. But seeing what you created, not just a beautiful property but a successful business model, opened my eyes to different possibilities." "So you decided to compete directly with me?" I asked, but without the edge that would have been present in the past. He chuckled ruefully. "I suppose it might look that way. But truthfully, I was inspired. After decades in development, I was feeling stagnant. Seeing your passion for these old buildings, the way you brought them back to life with such respect, it rekindled something in me I thought I'd lost years ago." "What was that?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Purpose beyond profit," he admitted. "Don't get me wrong. I still care about the bottom line. But the textile mill project became something more. Those workers' stories, the building's place in the community's identity. Preserving that mattered in a way I hadn't anticipated." This vulnerable admission from my typically stoic father caught me off guard. "I understand completely," I said. "That's what drew me to restoration work from the beginning, the sense of honoring something valuable that might otherwise be lost." For a moment we stood in comfortable silence, 2 professionals with newfound mutual respect, a father and daughter finding unexpected common ground after years of discord. "Perhaps," he suggested tentatively, "there might be room for collaboration, rather than just competition. Your expertise in historical residential properties and our experience with industrial conversions could be complementary." The idea of working professionally with my parents would have seemed absurd 2 years earlier, but we'd all evolved, finding our way to new understandings through unexpected paths. "I'd be open to discussing possibilities," I replied carefully. "Maybe start with consulting on each other's projects before considering a formal partnership." He nodded, looking pleased. "A measured approach. Very sensible. We're working on that," I said, feeling a strange urge to defend my sister despite our complicated history. "I know, and I'm glad," he replied sincerely. "The business venture is a positive step. I just want you to know that my interest now isn't sudden or opportunistic. It's been there, acknowledged but not acted upon, for quite some time." Our relationship progressed cautiously over the following months. We were both conscious of the potential complications and moved deliberately, spending time together primarily in private settings to avoid town gossip. Rebecca kept her word about supporting our connection, even joining us occasionally for casual dinners or local events where the 3 of us would inevitably run into acquaintances. "Rebecca is handling this whole situation with remarkable grace," my friend Alexis commented, after witnessing us all chatting comfortably at a community fundraiser. "I'm not sure I could be that evolved about my sister dating my ex-fiancé." "It helps that she broke up with him," I pointed out. "And that she's realized they weren't well matched. Plus, she's seeing someone new herself. That attorney she met through work." "Still," Alexis persisted, "it's unusual. Your whole family situation has transformed dramatically in a year." She wasn't wrong. The canceled wedding that had seemed like a family-destroying disaster had ultimately catalyzed significant positive changes. Rebecca and I had found a way to be sisters without being competitors. I was dating someone who appreciated my strengths rather than feeling threatened by them. Even my parents had begun to adjust their perspectives, though more slowly and with frequent backsliding. Speaking of my parents, they had reacted to the news of my relationship with Christopher Exactly as expected, with shock, disapproval, and dire predictions. "This will never work," my mother had declared during an uncomfortable Sunday dinner where we'd finally shared the news. "You're building a relationship on the ruins of your sister's happiness." "Mom," Rebecca had interjected surprisingly firmly, "my happiness wasn't ruined by Olivia. Christopher and I weren't right for each other. We both know that now." My father had shaken his head in disbelief. "I don't understand any of this. First, you girls are at each other's throats over the wedding, then you're business partners, and now you're passing boyfriends back and forth like trading cards." "That's a gross mischaracterization," I'd replied evenly. "Christopher and I waited an appropriate amount of time, and we have Rebecca's blessing." "It's still strange," my mother had insisted. "People will talk." "Let them," Rebecca had shrugged. "We know the truth. That dinner had ended with tentative peace, if not enthusiastic support. My parents were adjusting to this new reality, where their daughters made decisions independently of their approval and supported each other instead of competing. Almost exactly 1 year after the canceled wedding, Willow Creek hosted a different kind of celebration, the official launch of Willow Creek Consulting, with Rebecca at the helm of client relations. We transformed the estate's former carriage house into modern offices while preserving its historical character. The renovation had been Christopher's project, showcasing his talent for blending contemporary functionality with historical integrity. The launch party was elegant but understated. Champagne and hors d'oeuvre for local business leaders, potential clients, and supportive friends. Rebecca worked the room masterfully, connecting people with common interests, highlighting the firm's unique approach, and generating genuine excitement about our services. I watched her from across the room, marveling at how our relationship had evolved. A year ago, she'd banned me from her wedding at my own venue out of insecurity and jealousy. Now she was confidently leading a division of my company, dating a successful attorney who seemed to adore her, and happily chatting with my boyfriend, her ex-fiancé, without a hint of awkwardness. "Your sister is a natural," Christopher murmured, appearing at my side with fresh champagne. "She's signed 3 potential clients already, just through conversation." "That's her superpower," I agreed, accepting the glass. "She connects with people instantly. I've always envied that ability." "You have different strengths," he reminded me. "Together, you're formidable." My parents arrived fashionably late, making their way through the crowd with measured smiles. They'd been skeptical about our business partnership almost as much as our personal relationship developments, but had agreed to attend out of familial obligation, if nothing else. "Congratulations," my father said stiffly, kissing my cheek. "The place looks impressive." Later that evening, as our team celebrated at a rooftop bar with spectacular views of the Manhattan skyline, Rebecca sidled up beside me. "I saw you and Dad having what appeared to be a civil conversation," she observed. "Should I alert the media about this unprecedented event?" I laughed. It was surprisingly pleasant. He actually suggested we consider collaboration on future projects. Her eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? And you didn't immediately reject the idea?" "My therapy is clearly working wonders on this family." "I'm considering it," I admitted. "We'll start small, see how it goes. Their textile mill project really is impressive. There might be value in combining our different approaches." Rebecca studied me thoughtfully. 2 years ago, you were banned from my wedding at your own venue. Now we're business partners, I've given my blessing to you dating my ex-fiancé, and you're contemplating professional collaboration with our parents. Life takes unexpected turns, doesn't it? The wedding that wasn't turned out to be the beginning of something better for all of us, I reflected. Sometimes what looks like your worst moment becomes the catalyst for your best opportunities. Speaking of opportunities, Rebecca lowered her voice conspiratorially. Christopher mentioned he might have a certain question for you soon, something involving a ring, but not necessarily a big ceremony. I felt a flutter of anticipation. Did he now? Don't worry, she grinned. If you do decide to have a wedding, I promise not to ban you from your own venue. We laughed together, the humor healing the last remnants of old wounds. As the celebration continued around us, I took a moment to appreciate the journey of the past 2 years. From family outcast to award-winning entrepreneur. From a broken relationship with my sister to trusted business partners. From parental disapproval to professional respect. The path hadn't been easy or straightforward. It had required standing my ground when necessary, extending forgiveness when appropriate, and recognizing opportunities for growth even in painful circumstances. But standing here now, surrounded by colleagues who respected me, with family relationships transformed in ways I never imagined possible, I understood that sometimes being banned from the wedding you never wanted to attend is the first step toward the life you were meant to create. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Award winners inevitably face higher expectations, and family dynamics are never completely resolved. But I'd learned that with clear boundaries, genuine communication, and the courage to see opportunities where others see only obstacles, even the most difficult circumstances can lead to unexpected blessings. The venue my sister couldn't afford had become not just a successful business, but the foundation for a completely reimagined future, for both of us, and perhaps for our entire family. Sometimes winning isn't about getting what you initially wanted, but discovering what you truly need along the way. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.